Okay, so first of all, obviously, I want to thank the University of Central Florida and the Volo Foundation for organizing this very interesting conference, and I've really enjoyed the whole morning with many fascinating speakers. I really enjoyed, not that I didn't enjoy the other ones as much, but I really enjoyed the last panel with the sort of next generation of innovators and sort of seeing all the fantastic ideas, the solar panel with the little light. I mean, I know you didn't say that Sustainable Development Goal 4 was one of the most relevant ones, but you know, if you live around the equator, you have no electricity, it's dark at 6 o'clock. All the time before that you probably need to use to help your family do things. You have zero time to read. When you can't read, you can't feed your mind, etc., etc. Okay, so I had already prepared my remarks before Monday, and I had given my slides in, and Abigail had taken them, and then on Monday some things happened that I really think I need to talk about. So I came here in a panic and said to Abigail, well, I've changed my whole slide deck. And she's like, well, you can't. Anyway, I think we fixed it. Let's see. So on Monday morning, I was reminded of this quote, very famous quote, start of A Tale of Two Cities, a book about the French Revolution and what was happening and what was in London and why it was the best of times and the worst of times. What on earth made me think of this on Monday? Well, as been mentioned today, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, published a new special report looking at the different impacts we would see between a 1.5 Celsius degree increase in pre-industrial temperature and a 2%. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, oh my God, it doesn't make any difference. I think Catherine Hayhoe said it really well. We don't feel the difference between a half degree. You know, if I'm cold, if it's 33 degrees Fahrenheit, if it's 33 or 34, I'm still cold. If it's like 85 or 86, I'm still hot. However, for the natural environment, it makes a massive difference. It makes a massive difference to our oceans heating up, and therefore it makes a massive difference to things like hurricanes and glaciers and droughts, etc., etc. So this was a big wake-up call. It was saying basically 1.5 degrees could be around the corner. It could be as early as 2030. I have 2 young children. That means by the time they're in college, the world will look very different. And that is very frightening to me. However, best of times. Something else happened, and I am a geeky economist, and so on Monday they announced the Nobel Prize in Economics. And every year it's interesting to me just because it's my field, but this year it was particularly relevant because it was awarded to 2 groundbreaking economists, 2 US economists actually. The first one is William Nordhaus, who got his prize for integrating climate change into long-run macroeconomic models. And the other one was Paul Romer, who got it also for macroeconomics, but for integrating technological change. Now, those might seem like they're 2 very different things. They're connected by one thing, which is long-run macroeconomic models, correct? No, not for me. What it really is when you bring those 2 together, when you recognize the effect that climate change already has on our economies, and you then look at what technological change can do to avoid the 1.5 degree or the 2 degrees Celsius. So really, that's why I was so excited on Monday. So I'm just going to read, you know, it's entirely possible for us. Once we start reducing carbon emissions, we'll be surprised it wasn't as hard as we thought it would be. I'm an economist, as I've said before. I'm also a pragmatic policy maker. That's my world. I work for the Environmental Defense Fund. We try to work across the aisle. We work with partners. We work with governments. And we're very realistic about what really is possible within policy making. I have looked at a lot of economic models. Some are sort of gloom and doom, like 20, 30 years ago. Oh, if you try and switch completely out of fossil fuels, it'll cost this much, it'll cost that much. Really, again, going back to Bill's work, I ardently believe what is written there, that the claim that it would be ruinous or disastrous is just wrong. And that's where Paul Romer's work comes in. It's really about the technological change and the innovation that we can expect to see. So what is it that we need to do? So it was mentioned here already today. The IPCC report mentioned it. Catherine mentioned it, and a lot of other people mentioned it as well. Really, we need to turn the corner on the growth rate of carbon emissions that we've seen. In certain countries, it's already flattened. Ironically, 2008, 2009, 2010 was a good year for the US. It wasn't because we were trying that hard, it was because we had an economic crisis, manufacturing went down, emissions went down. It wasn't anything that we can really take credit for. But we believe it's possible. So we need to turn the corner. We need to go to carbon neutral. We need to look at sinks. That's what the IPCC report says. We don't need to just turn the corner and reduce our emissions. We need to actually actively start taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So how on earth are we going to do that? I mean, this is our economy. This is our life. Can I ask a very stupid question? How many of you arrived here by horse? Carriage? No. How many of you, show of hands, have one of these in your pocket? Right? Growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, this would have been magic. This is pure magic. It's right up there with Merlin. This is a computer in your pocket. This has more information than an Encyclopedia Britannica, which is, I mean, I can't remember the last time I've seen one, but it's like a whole bookcase full. My kids don't even know what an encyclopedia is. They don't even know what a phone book is. Technological change can be fast and quick. I don't think any of us are expecting us to go back to horse or to no longer have this magic in our pocket. So what we need to find is a technological innovation. I'm an environmentalist, but I'm not saying shut down everything now. We'll go back and live in the forest. That's not what we are about at all. I've said it about 10 times today. I am an economist, and I believe in the power of economic incentives. Not because I'm a capitalist per se, but because I'm a realist and I'm pragmatic. The only reason why we haven't so far done something real about climate policy in this country and in many other countries around the world is fear that it will disrupt our way of life, fear that it will cost too much, and fear that it will take away from some of the economic incumbents, whether it's the oil companies, and possibly give it to some others, you know, the new technological innovators. So I strongly believe that what we really need to do is give some really strong signals to the market that we're ready for technological change. And yes, you can do that by providing research and development grants. Very essential, not enough. Yes, you can do that by giving government grants to people who want to install electricity on their roof. Again, great, but not enough, especially thinking about my colleague on the earlier panel who said, it's great for some people that you give them a 30% rebate. They still can't afford the 70%, so it's not really going to help everybody. So I fundamentally believe we need a top-down, huge policy signal. Yes, we can make many differences ourselves. Yes, I should fly less. Yes, I should not use as much plastic as I do, but my most important thing that I can do is to vote, and to vote for people who will make climate an essential part of their policy. Once you can do that, once the government is brave enough to set that big signal to their economy, we are taking this serious and we are not going to let you pollute for free, then you will see the entrepreneurs, the developers rushing to give us solutions. Until we give that signal, it will not happen at a large enough scale. It will not happen at the scale that we need it at. Cap and trade, we've talked this morning very quickly about the fact that there's different approaches, and you know, yes, I have a preference. My preference is cap and trade, but carbon tax with environmental integrity, I mean carbon tax with a limit that we're targeting, would get you there as well. It's one potential policy solution. What it does is it sets a cap. So the scientists will tell us you can emit X amount this year, because we know there are sinks of an equivalent amount, you as an economy can go and pollute that much, at most, not more. We will give you an allowance for each ton that you emit. Whether you yourself, if I have this table here in front of me, these 3 people each get an allowance, maybe you are much, much better at reducing your emissions than you are. And it might not be because you're not trying, it might just be the specific industry that you're in, your existing investment, etc. And I don't really care. What I care about is that as a table, you don't emit more than I allow you to do. You can trade, you know. It will be cheaper for you to buy the emission reductions from him. You will make money because, you know, it's cheaper to do than doing it yourself, and he'll make money off the emission reductions he can already make. Everybody's happy. That's basically the idea between cap and trade. What happens with the revenues, to me as an environmentalist, is actually less important. That's an equity issue, it's a social issue. Yes, you can put it back in the economy to drive more innovation, etc. But what really matters to me is that we limit those emissions. Once those are limited, where the revenue goes, as a pure environmentalist, is actually irrelevant. That's a moral decision for society. Is it possible? Can we ever do this? Do we think we have a government that ever will be brave enough to set limits? Yes, it's been done before. Story of acid rain. Growing up in the 80s, 70s and 80s in Europe, it wasn't just about the forest that was dying. It was about literally seeing the 13th century castle crumbling in front of our eyes. It was about our monuments dying. It was huge. It was the kind of thing that I, as a kid, would lie up. That and atomic weapons were the 2 things that kept me awake. My kids don't even know what acid rain is. It's not an issue anymore. We saw the challenge. We instituted a policy. We made change. It's not an issue anymore. So in the US, it was mainly about forest, and it was actually a Republican president with, at that time, a Democratic Congress, so totally bipartisan solution that signed into law the Clean Air Act amendments, and part of that was a cap and trade system for acid rain. So just like the system I explained to you earlier, there was this overall amount of SO2 that would be allowed into the atmosphere. Policymakers didn't care who did it, just do it, figure it out. This is acid rain on the east coast, eastern part of the US. This is what we have now. It is possible. All we need is the bravery to actually make the change. What about climate? Can we do the same thing? Pretty much. It's a similar, well, it's a bigger scale issue, but the bravery that the government needs, it's the same. David Vogel this morning gave us a beautiful graph of what Sweden is doing, the many complementary policies that it has instigated. Well, we don't even have to go that far. Just look at what California is doing. California's got a very strong vision on decarbonization. A couple of weeks ago, Governor Brown announced that he wants the state to be carbon neutral by 2050, which is coincidentally, or maybe he has a crystal ball, exactly the IPCC's recommendation, go carbon neutral by 2050. And as you can see, it involves all sectors. It involves our industrial sectors, it involves our utilities, and it involves the way we use our ag, our land, and our forestry. There's a lot of carbon there. If you treat it badly, that carbon will go up in the air. If you treat it well, it will stay, and if you grow it, it will absorb even more. Has it killed the economy of California? Absolutely not. It is completely, well, let me put it this way. I cannot prove, and David Vogel will know this because I don't have the data for it, I cannot prove that cap and trade has been good for the economy. I can't prove that. What I can prove is that it hasn't been bad. Compared to the rest of the US, California has done better in the same time frame in terms of job creation, state GDP, than the other states that did not have a cap and trade system. So to say cap and trade or carbon tax is going to kill our economy is simply not true when we look at evidence. This graph clearly shows the decoupling of the GDP growth and the carbon growth. Why is that? Because it has instigated technological innovation. Some of the examples we heard about here today. 20 years ago, solar was very expensive. Look at how it's going down now. It's going down rapidly. I'm eagerly awaiting the innovation that people are working very hard on to make the batteries smaller. That's the next big challenge on solar. Yet, currently, our renewables are still a very small part, in part because there is no incentive. There is no price for doing it. Currently, with fracking, the US is pretty energy independent. Why would we look different? Why would innovators invest much if there's no potential bonus at the end of it? Yet, they are doing it. So, because they see further than the politicians can do, and already they see a demand in other parts of the world. Think what that figure would look like if, in addition, the governments would have the audacity to throw down the gauntlet and really put a big policy incentive there. Around the world, people are doing it. This is a very quick map of where countries have expressed an interest in climate policy. US is a little bit black, as you can see. Need to work on that, but still very hopeful. Thank you very much for your attention.